everybody. How's it going? Thanks for joining today. Hi, Adam. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time today. Welcome to the party. I'm trying to figure out the right. Usually what I like to do as all of these streaming services fire up, I like to have a little bit of random banter so that people have time to join the room. I'm figuring out which format I would like to start with. Maybe let's go with this one. Hi, everybody. My name is Brian Engelman, and this is the Agree to Disagree show, or it's the Unhappy Hour Sports Show. Cool thing about this is that we are restreaming this onto both platforms on YouTube and on X. So if you're not following the New American Media and the Agree to Disagree show and the Unhappy Hour Sports Show, you need to do so. What we're doing today is we're discussing Tour De Patriot. Adam is with us today, Adam Boyd, and he's going to discuss his plan to cycle from colony to colony to colony. Yes, that's all 13 of them. And we will discuss the plan. We're going to discuss the origination of this idea. There's so many questions, but Adam, really quick, if people want to learn more about you and the project, I had the site up here. Let me pull it one more time. Tell them where to go. So if they want to do a deep dive and do that, let's get that out of the way right off the top.
Cool. Yeah, if you want to have information on the tour, just go to www.tourdepatriot.com. My contact information's in there, all the information about the event, from which stops we're going to make, what day the stop's going to be, the date of the gala at the end of the tour, and kind of what the initiative is all about.
Excellent. Well, then let's go ahead and ask everyone to go check that out, and we'll jump right into it here. So, Adam, we go back. I think there's a phrase in the legal profession where they say, never ask a question you don't know the answer to. Never ask a question that you don't know the answer to, but whatever. So we were at the same high school. What recollection do you have of your time with me? Now, you were a year behind me. Is that correct? I'm trying to remember.
I believe we were 2 years behind.
2 years behind. Okay. I was 97. That makes you 99.
Yep. My experience, I mean, I was 5 foot nothing, 100 nothing, just like the little saying from the movie Rudy, playing scout team football, basically getting knocked around the field by you and everybody else for the entire year. But man, what a great time. What a great time.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. And I think what they like to do, we played at Brunswick Blue Devils in Ohio outside of Cleveland. Undefeated teams, by the way. Back-to-back undefeated seasons for my squad, at least. But, yeah, they like to train you on a defensive position and an offensive position. But, like, by the time I started playing and really got a chance to start for the undefeated team my whole senior year, I didn't want to learn an offensive position. I wanted to go play scout team defense. Like I played double defensive end instead of like doing both positions. I just wanted to just double down on my task. Yeah, I just remember you were kind of like a scat back. You were quick. You moved around, and it was my job to stop you from moving. So I mean, we smashed heads more than 1,000 times, I would imagine. But yeah, definitely good times. Good people come from Brunswick, Ohio. Without a doubt. So, yeah, Adam, thanks for putting this together. It's an interesting project. I know you and we've talked off air several times about the logistics of it. And my God, there's a lot of logistics. Tell me about the origination idea. Where does the inspiration come from? Why do you suddenly decide? You're not a professional racer, as far as I know. How did you come up with this idea to take 25 days and go 1,200 miles across the 13 colonies? Like, where did this start?
Yeah, I'm not a professional racer. I am an endurance athlete, but on the running side. To be honest, I don't even own a bike at this point. So it's going to be an interesting 1,200 miles for me. I'm training real hard for a 100-mile run that I'm doing in July. And then I got about 4 to 5 week break. And then I'm going to hop on the bike, do 1,200 miles. But the origination oddly came from kind of boredom. I was in the hospital with my daughter. She's 4 years old. She ended up swallowing like a magnetic ball. And we were just kind of waiting for it to pass. So I'm hanging out in the hospital room, just doing nothing, scrolling on my phone because, we were there for like 3 days. And I was curious as to what the longest bar crawl that's ever happened was. By the way, it's 3,000 miles. And I was like, that sounds really cool. Being an endurance athlete, I'm very fascinated with, human feats. And I was like, that's kind of cool. I wonder what the longest one, it'd be kind of cool to go from like Boston to Miami, like all the major cities along the coast and do like this kind of cool bar crawl. And like the more I kind of sat on it, I was like, I could probably really turn this into something productive instead of just going to drink beer for like 3 months along the coast. So that's kind of how the Tour De Patriot was born. In my background, like I'm part of organizations called Mom and Dad Army. They're, pro-America organizations. We're looking to like strengthen the family unit, protect children. It's kind of the main missions of the organizations. So I was trying to figure out like how I could wrap up like this idea, being part of those organizations, and then incorporating my own business, which is Soulful Training. And I design wellness programs for organizations, and like it was just like a cluster of like basically everything I'm doing like wrapped into one initiative. And I was like, awesome! I can go do an awesome endurance feat. I can put things out there about the organizations that I'm part of, and I want to figure out like how we can bridge the gap of communication. I really feel like, on some of the big talking points in this country, like we're just flying over each other's heads. Like we're not talking to each other. We're talking at each other. And like, how can we change that?
Yeah. If you caught that comment that came in, Kenneth, how are you, sir? Kenneth joins us for a lot of our shows and loves to put his messages up there. He's assuming that you're not biking for Biden. We're talking about talking past each other. I mean, it was sold to us through the media, like, oh, this President Trump, he's so divisive. We need Biden. We need stability. It's like we've got nothing remotely resembling solid conversations flying back and forth between us. It's not even talking at each other. It's screaming at each other. It's denigrating each other, and it's I understand the politics of power. I'm not a dummy. But just to see years of time wasted on just arguing over fake stories just for political gain to block agendas, and like I understand it's a game of 4-dimensional chess. I get it. I get it. But oh my God, Adam, it seems like none of the important stuff is being managed in a way where a commonsensical person could look at it and go, yep, they're doing an okay job in some of these areas. You just kind of look and you go, oh, I see a fire over there. There's another fire over there. I smell yet another fire. And it just seems like everything is falling apart at the seams. It feels like we've entered a weird time where it's not okay to be American. Big devil, little devil, fight, rabble, rabble, rabble. I mean, patriotism has been weaned out of us. I feel like since you and I were in school, it's graduated. It wasn't the same in elementary school, but middle school, high school, into college at the time, it seems like becoming anti-American was the stuff that the schools were teaching us. Just to be anti-patriotic is a cool thing. And
that's really what we're trying to change here. Like, this initiative isn't about Trump or Biden. It's about Americans. It's about that feeling that we had on September 12th, 2001. Like, the only way we're going to solve our problems is if we do it for ourselves. And I think we've gotten so used to relying on politics or somebody else to solve our problems that we don't understand how to do it for ourselves. And when we start making ourselves successful and learning how to grow our own food and learning how to work as a community and hunt and do all these things that make us a little bit more self-sustainable, we kind of forget that the people in power are even there. And that's kind of necessarily the goal, because I understand, like, from a national security standpoint, we need roads, we need bridges, we need, police, fire, like, we need all of these things, but we need minimal government involved in it. And we need to start working as a community to really get back to where I think we could be.
In those original 13 colonies, those stories, there's something so special about that time frame, about that, just the physical location. I know on a lot of family trips, my parents, they worked hard and they hustled and they tried to raise us the best they could, and we definitely did not get everything we wanted. We definitely did not get everything we asked for. But we got a lot of things, and we got things that were similar enough. And it was like, okay. And it was like, there's a greater plan. But one of the things my parents always tried to provide for my brother and I was to get us out on family vacations, to take us away for, you're going to be going up and down the coast for 25 days, almost a full month, 4 weeks or so. And one of the things we would do is we would visit the battleground sites. We would go to the Gettysburgs. We would go hit up some of these places with extreme historic value, American, the lineage, and just trying to understand, where did we come from. And I remember during the housing collapse in 2008, I was watching History Channel, Learning Channel, a lot of shows, and they were long drawn out series that got really in depth about the history of the American Revolution, about the late 1700s and what the British were doing and what the Americans had enough of. And it's just a fascinating time frame. Have you spent a lot of time? I know you from Ohio. Did you ever live on the East Coast? Are you familiar with the area? Are you going back to your roots in any way? Is this all foreign territory to you?
I mean, other than like vacation visits to like New York, Boston, I've been to Savannah, Georgia, other than Washington, D.C., outside of like, a couple day visit, I haven't really spent a lot of time on the East Coast. So this is going to be kind of a cool learning experience for me. It already has been, because I had to research the route, research some smaller towns that maybe we haven't really heard of, or we don't really pay much attention to, that have like historical value within our nation's history. The event starting in Exeter, New Hampshire, and I bet you most people that are listening to this have no idea that that town even exists, but it has a local historic tavern where a lot of colonists and patriots actually had political discussions that were catalysts for the Revolutionary War. And, bringing some of these things to light, I think, is really important to understand where we came from. And by doing so, I really think it explains like how far we've come, right? Like we've abolished slavery. We've gotten away from Jim Crow. We have a checkered past, and we're today. But like, I want to show some of the progress that our nation has made. And instead of like dwelling on all the negative things that we've done, we have a new generation of people that, instead of hating the United States, we can actually be patriotic and realize, let's just do better as a country.
Yeah, I think we can do better. And one of the places I'm a big Cleveland Browns fan, as you know. I love football. And I had a chance to go to a Cleveland Browns game in Foxborough. By the way, go to tourdepatriot.com as you're looking at on the page here for more information about this trip. And if you are interested in getting tickets or sponsorship or event details, contacting them, questions, go to tourdepatriot.com for all of those needs. But when I was in Boston, Adam, I had a chance to go to the Green Dragon Tavern. And that has often been referred to as the birthplace of America, the birthplace of a nation, because that's where the Patriots met, and they would have their drinks, and they planned what began and kind of carried through the revolution right there. That was an interesting, it's a very strange. Have you ever been to the Green Dragon? And is it on your list of places to go? I would imagine it's got to be, right?
Yeah, I've been there, and it is also on my list. So one of the things that I'm going to do along the way is I've picked, probably the most historic or oldest tavern or bar in the cities that we're stopping in, and trying to do a lot of the interviews there, like almost to mimic what our forefathers did in 1775.
So like a Paul Revere, you're riding through the town. We got to play with that name somehow. Brand something Paul one if by land, two if there's a way to turn something quirky and fun. I know Kenneth. Try to work in Tour De Patriot or Adam Boyd or this tour. Come up with some names and ideas. There's nobody better at it than Kenneth with jokes and one-liners. But yeah, I think there's something interesting about going down the back parts of the country and, like you said, towns that aren't really known, but they're historic. Living out in Los Angeles, I know you've being in the Southwest as well for you, there's Route 66. And it just, as you're going down the freeway, you will parallel Route 66. And there's a whole other America that's just right off the road. You could throw a couple of basketballs and it would bounce and roll into an abandoned gas station or an abandoned hotel or a house that just time forgot. There's probably going to be a lot of parallels seeking out these old taverns and these old historic places. Are you planning on like teaming up with other riders? Are you doing this all solo? Like how is it going to work logistically?
So I'm going to do the ride solo. And it's funny you mentioned Paul Revere. I kind of took a page out of his playbook. It's going to be a solo ride. I'm actually trying to get the bike branded Brown Beauty after Paul Revere's horse.
Ah.
Yeah, and it's like Kenneth asked what bicycle I'm using. I have no idea yet. I don't even own a bike at this point. I'm reaching out. I've reached out to a couple of cycling companies to see if we can work with a collaboration together and get a bike for the event.
All right, can we drill down on that for a second? You're planning on biking across all of the 13 colonies, and you're not even a biker. You don't even have a bike.
I don't even have a bike.
Okay,
I'm training real hard for my run. I'm training, a couple hours a day. And I'm anticipating getting a bike before September 3rd. I'm hoping to have one here in the next couple weeks, inside the month, because I'm going to know I need to train for that. But I'm hoping my endurance pass is going to kind of carry me just a little bit.
All right. Okay, so number one, we need to get you a brown bike, right? And you need to find some custom wrap that could like custom design it like a horse, right? Like, are we thinking crazy like this? We're starting from scratch, so we might as well, right?
Yeah, I would love to make it as like unique as possible. I would love, brown bike with a wrap. Having it look like a horse I think is a fantastic idea. Definitely want something that's going to make my life a little easier. So we're looking at a fairly decent bike because I don't think my 1991 Huffy is gonna handle it for me.
with the pegs out front so you can ride on the wheel. Does Elon make a cyber bike yet? Does he make an electric bike? There are some killer electric bikes, and I know that probably defeat the purpose of what you're planning on doing, but there's some amazing electric bikes. I don't know if you're totally against electric bikes. You want it to be as grueling as possible, right?
I want it to be as grueling as possible. Part of this initiative is kind of showing what one person can do. And like, if you have some endurance and grit, like you can make a big difference with just one effort. So I wanted to give an actual physical show of endurance.
Okay. Well, let's talk about your physical show of endurance. The previous job that I know you worked in was law enforcement. And now you're doing some sort of training, physical training. So can you kind of rewind a little bit and walk us back to, this is a physical endeavor. It's going to be mental as well. I mean, there's an endurance factor that goes into this. You're doing 100 miles. You said 100 miles run is what
I have a 100-mile run July 27th in Akron, Ohio. Okay,
so you're very familiar with the mindset challenge here, but kind of walk people through where you came from with the physicality component of this. We got to where the seed of the idea came up, where that came from. Now figure out, like, kind of walk us through how you got there physically.
Oddly enough, it probably started on the same football field that we played on. Being kind of being kind of a smaller guy, I didn't hit my athletic spurt until about a year and a half later after your class was well graduated. I learned that I could take, if I just kept pushing forward, that like I could take a lot more than I thought. So like that mental aspect really started playing scout team tailback against that 97 Brunswick team. And, just learning how to endure and take a beating. And that kind of translated. I've always been a runner, I loved track in high school as well, cross country. And it just kind of just continued for me. And I love to be able to push the endurance limits. I like to see how far not only can I take my body, but how far I can take my mind.
Right. And so when you were working in law enforcement, then like kind of walk us through that process, because there's a lot of physicality in there. Oh, they're just sitting around eating donuts. Well, okay, yeah, there's some of those times, of course. By the way, most jobs have those downtimes, but when that job is demanding, it's life and death physically demanding. What was like, how did that portion of your life kind of train you for wanting to continue down this physicality path? That had to be interesting, because we've talked off air, and it's kind of the places you worked, and it wasn't regular law enforcement. There were some special components to it. Tell us about that part.
Well, yeah, I worked on an Indian reservation right just south of Phoenix, but we had, because I went through state academy, I kind of had a unique certification. I was state certified, I was locally certified, and I also had a federal law enforcement certification. So like when I became a detective, if I had cases that took me outside the reservation, I worked investigations in conjunction with, Phoenix and some of the surrounding cities, because we had the ability to do so. So I actually got to see quite a bit more than a lot of local law enforcement, just because of where I worked. But as far as the physicality goes, I always wanted to make sure that I was prepared. You never knew when you were going to need to run, fight, which we did often. The place I worked was a very violent place, which is something probably a lot of people don't know about Indian country. But we were running and fighting quite a bit, and I always wanted to make sure that I was prepared and that I wasn't the liability. I wanted to make sure that I was going home at night, that my partners were going home at night. And quite frankly, the more physical condition you're in, the less force that you're going to end up having to use. Even from a visual standpoint, again, I'm not an imposing guy. Like I'm not 6'5" and 250 pounds, right? But I look like I at least kept in shape. And that right there will take you a long way. And for somebody to second guess themselves whether they want to do what they're thinking they're going to do. They did a study years ago, and they interviewed, I can't remember, it was like 50 or 100 prisoners that were in for murdering law enforcement. And the number one commonality of why they decided to do what they did was they sized that officer up and realized that based on their appearance, whether it was unshined boots, disheveled uniform, they didn't look physically fit, that they believed that they could take them. And they made the decision based on that officer's appearance. And I heard that very early on in my career, and I never wanted to be that person. I would rather present myself in a manner where it would make someone second guess, and maybe it would alleviate a fight or two.
Well, another phrase that comes from those colonial days from Benjamin Franklin was a pound of prevention, a penny, excuse me, a penny of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So if you can avoid a situation by not getting into it in the first place, that's the number one thing. When it comes to physicality, the best way to win a fight is to not get in a fight. But Absolutely. If you got to fight, what's that phrase? Always avoid a fight when you can. But if you must fight like you're the third monkey trying to get up on that ark. Because it's like this isn't pretend, this isn't tapping out. There's no like this is like final. Every moment could be final, and that has to keep the adrenaline surging. So you took the physicality of that job, like you said, it was maybe particularly physical. more so than some of the average beat cops we would imagine in smaller towns. But how did you take that into what you're doing now? With you're not just biking, because you're not a professional biker, you don't even own a bike, but we're getting you Brown Betty. Somebody's going to donate you Brown Betty, and somebody's going to customize it. It's got to be brown. I'm already seeing it. It's already the coolest bike ever. Brown Beauty. I'm calling it Betty. Brown Beauty. But tell us about what you've been doing with the just in the same realm of staying in shape, training people, trying to watch people get out of habits that have led them to where they are, which is where they're unhappy with their body, with their endurance, with their strength. Some of that is obviously part of what's in the food and the water, and there's no way around that. But that's the stuff you can control through diet. But talk about what the work that you're doing to get other people to take their fitness maybe not as seriously as you, 1,200 miles biking and 1,000 or 100-mile marathon, but tell us about the work you're doing with that and how people connect with you on that front as well.
So I primarily work with organizations, but more specifically like frontline workers. I worked with a lot of SANE nurses, so like sexual assault nurses. They specialize in working with those types, police departments, fire departments. I've worked with the military. I've worked with veterans. So, and one of the things I learned on my fitness journey is working out and eating right are just a small portion of just being healthy. When I started this journey because when I got onto our SWAT team, my commander found out that I ran ultra marathons. And he was like, hey, why don't you start training our guys? I think you'd be a good fit for this. I was like, well, I don't really understand how to train anybody, not at a professional level. I could train you to run like a 5K or something like that, just through my experience. So I went out and I got like a strength and conditioning certification, and I went through a nutrition course. And then my chief asked me to like create a wellness program. So like I ran a couple of those initiatives. I got nominated for the FBI National Academy Resilience Train the Trainer. So I got selected for that. And that was really like the point where I realized like mind, body, and soul is where like health really comes in. So after that, I got my breathwork certification, and then I became a Wim Hof instructor. And like, based on like all of the skills that I learned through these certifications, I put together a program and built a business out of it for people to look at their health from a holistic standpoint.
Yeah, did you ever used to play video games? Were you big into the video games?
Contra and like Tecmo Bowl, Madden a little bit.
Okay, let me tell you about Contra specifically, because I just got like an NES version. It's like a mini NES, and it has like 1,000 games preloaded on it. And I was playing Contra the other day. But something hilarious from a few months ago, somebody sent me a link and go, hey man, Alex Jones has a video game. Click this. I go, what? I click it, and suddenly you're running through the streets of San Francisco. It's like Contra. You're picking up and the weapons are increasing, and you're stepping over poop and hypodermic needles, and you're right. Like it's just on your phone. It was one of the funniest games ever. But no, I was just kind of thinking about video games specifically because like the role-playing games, the RPGs, whether it's Dragon Warrior 3 or Final Fantasy or some of these, you level up. You have all these different categories. Dungeons and Dragons, same concept. It's like, how do you add 3 more hit points here? How do you add 2 damage points? If you wear an amulet, it'll give you a ring of protection. So your ring of protection will help you avoid situations and, I don't know, just be more prepared for anything that comes around you. Your strength. All right, your strength training is going to help you if you have to battle in that way. Your Wim Hof is going to help you with your breath work, which will give you, a boost in your endurance. I would imagine, like you said, it's not just what you eat and your workout plan. Those are 2 components of probably 30 different components that lead to roundabout health. And I'm just seeing it like the Final Fantasy. Oh, this is my wizard. They're really great with magic, but they're not so good with strength or power attacks. I'll boost them up with this because they're not good at that. I'd imagine it's similar with humans. Everyone you're working with probably excels in a couple of areas. and they're probably well behind in others. Does that analogy make sense, even though you're not particularly a gamer per se?
Yeah, I mean, I've played video games. I mean, but yes, I get the analogy. Um, yeah, and I think and I'm starting to see it more and more in the first responder space. Like I have a friend who teaches yoga to first responders, and like it was something that they pushed back on for a long time. And as a yoga practitioner, I incorporated into my training. Like I realized not only is it good for my running, it's great for my overall health. It's good for mobility, for longevity. It's good to connect my breath with my body. It's good to help me relax. Usually they do like a savasana at the end of the session. And so we can kind of take our physiology down to a base level, or below a base level, in a more relaxed state. And I think there's a lot of professions out there that are starting to see the benefit of these healing or like wellness practices that were kind of regarded as like, that's not really for us. Like, you'd have to market it like tactical yoga. We're doing like, warrior 2 with like a sword or so. You would have to make it like cool for like first responders to want to do. And, but I think they're starting to come around, especially with the younger generation.
Right. We are talking with Adam Boyd of Tour De Patriot. If you're interested in learning more about his plan coming up to bike 1,200 miles across the 13 original colonies of the United States to reinvigorate patriotism, pedaling for patriotism, as it were, go to tourdepatriot.com and check that out. And of course, yeah, there's a big difference between the 1,200 miles Adam will be biking and the 12,000 inches that Kenneth B says he could bike. So, yeah, you start where you are. You do what you can with what you got when you can. But that being said, I had a point. I jotted a note down, and I meant to add on to something you were saying about you never wanted to be the weakest link. Let me circle back to that point for a second, because I was just a couple of days ago watching an interview with Taylor Hawkins and Dave Grohl. May or may not have been on the Stern show. I don't remember, but they were talking about like, what was it like, Taylor jumping in to be the drummer for Dave Grohl, like one of the best drummers in rock history? Like, it's got to be intimidating. He's like, yeah. He goes, Dave's been cool. Dave's never even been a dick, but just the concept is intimidating. And there was a quote that he said, and I wanted to mention it, but I didn't want to interrupt you in your story there. Taylor Hawkins said, you're only as good as your drummer. Any band, no matter who you go to see them live. We're not talking about albums or one hit song or something. Go see a band. And that band, I promise you, will never be better than their drummer. You're only as good as your drummer. But then on the flip side, you're only as bad as your drummer. Even a bad band can stand out if a drummer's kick ass enough. So it's kind of like not wanting to be the weak link, not wanting to be someone viewed as prey. And there's something we're really big on here at the New American Media. By the way, check out thenewamericanmedia.com and patreon.com/the New American Media if you'd like to support what we're doing for independent media. The breath work that you're doing, specifically the Wim Hof method, preparedness. I'm going to get to Wim Hof. So start with my first question and then work into some breathing explanation there to elaborate, if you would. But preparedness in general, TNAM preparedness. It's one of the groups that we have on Facebook. Find it. But just overall being prepared. You've seen a lot of bad situations. They say when seconds count, police are only minutes away. And that's not a knock on policing. It's just the reality of the situation. If an emergency happens, you're just in it instantly. It's not like, well, I'm going to prepare for this emergency that's going to occur in about an hour. Oh, I'm going to brace myself. Let me get my checklist out and do some stretching. Talk to us about preparedness, if you could. Like some of the bad scenes you've stumbled on. Were there lessons you learned about how that person might have been more prepared to avoid a situation? Things that helped you walk into a bad spot, but because you had a plan in place, you avoided a catastrophe? Like, give us some advice on that, because I think far too many of us are far too comfortable in the modern society of tapping a button and food shows up at your door. That's a far cry from hunting your food down. throughout the course of a long weekend, hoping that you can feed your family?
So really, I'm going to break this down probably too simplistically. I feel like there's two types of crimes, and we can get into the details of that. Like that's neither here nor there, but the crimes are usually done like within the family, like somebody you know, or it's random, right? So you're prepared, and the vast, vast, vast majority of those crimes are usually, somebody you know. Somebody you know probably broke into your house, domestic violence, child abuse, sexual assault. All of those things are generally committed by somebody you know. And of course, there's, a percentage that are not. So if you really want to be prepared, I would do two things. One, learn how to communicate, because the vast majority of issues between people can be mitigated through communication, or stepping away, or just recognize the situation. And two, just understanding your surroundings. This is us, right? Walking through a parking lot, doing whatever. Yeah. Our face is buried in a phone, which makes us easy targets. So if we learn how to communicate with others, and we're aware of our surroundings and do things to protect ourselves, we're going to stop the vast majority of crime. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And I think those are the two of the biggest things that we can do.
Just being alert and face up. Yeah, I mean, people talk all the time. I mean, there's what are they calling them? UAPs now? Unidentified aerial. I think of them as UFOs still. I got to learn the new terminology, but from UFOs, and that's just something that's up in the sky. That doesn't always mean aliens. Chemtrails, clouds, are they seeding? Are they doing geoengineering? People talk a lot of the firmament, flat earth, globe. Like I hear a lot of interesting conversations about the sky is what I'm getting at. But like you said, most of us have our faces looking down, not paying any attention to the stuff we paid attention to as kids. We didn't have cell phones in our pockets. I can't tell you how many nights we looked up at the stars and looked up at the beautiful day and the clouds and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, this modern society, it's a screen here, and a screen here. It's basically a digital world. It's super important that people are not making themselves more vulnerable in parking lots or ever. Bad things can happen anywhere at any time. That's not to be paranoid. That's just to kind of have a plan at all times. And I do want to get back to the breath work in a second, but you said working with first responders and the job of policing. And, we've had many conversations just for people that don't understand what it means to be policing. You've been in an industry that's been vilified, demonized. It's been dragged through the lying legacy media with false. Just the statistics aren't right. The arguments don't make sense. Yeah, there's too many problems here, so we need to defund the police. We need fewer people to help. And you're like, it's maddening. It's one of the main reasons why I fled Los Angeles, because nobody there cared about getting the bad people who were preying on the good people away from the general population. So all that being said, do you have any thoughts on how your profession, I guess we would call this your former profession? Are you ever considering going back, or like that chapter's done?
It's former profession. I'm very much grateful for my time in the profession. I did over a decade of service. I loved it. I met some great people. I work with some amazing people, but my new venture is just, I need to see what I'm made of and what I'm capable of without a ceiling.
Okay. Out of a box. All right. But what do you think people don't understand about policing, having spent some time in law enforcement? Like, are there misconceptions? Are there important points that people consistently get wrong? And is there just something that, I don't know, anything in general you want to say about the profession? Because not all of us have been on that side.
That's a whole 2-hour show in itself.
And we can follow up later. We hope to have you back with giving you some progress updates. We'll make a note, like to kind of talk about the policing profession maybe down the road sometime. But yeah, I don't know, just if anything in general popped into your mind, or just a reoccurring frustration that you would see, and it didn't have to be that way if people just understood more.
People really truly don't understand use of force, and the media, of course, picks something that is on the face of it, it looks fairly bad. And we've had a couple situations come up in the last, 10, I've seen it on YouTube or whatnot, that it's definitely, outside policy or excessive force. But the vast majority of the ones I've seen on the media, at least the major news media, are picked intentionally because it looks bad, but there's actually nothing wrong with what the officer did. And it is really one of those things that unless you have experience in it and understand the mindset that goes with like being in a use of force situation, it's very hard to comprehend when you're outside that group. And because a lot of people, they put some context into like what that officer is thinking. They're like, oh, well, they knew this. And I'm like, when I approach a scene, you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking like, what's going on? Because I have my CAD notes on the computer. And I'm like, okay, I'm responding to a 911 call and the person hung up, but they're just screaming in the background. So a lot of times I have limited information. And then I'm just assessing the situation very quickly. And the last thing on my mind is this person, this race or this or that, or like, that's not even something that really crosses our minds. Like when you go into a situation, it's like assess the situation, take appropriate action. And I think a lot of people want to insert something that isn't there. Not to say that it isn't there, on some instances, but I guarantee you 99 north of 99% of them, that's really not the case.
Yeah. It's almost like you arrive on a scene and you don't even see you see an orb, you see an outline. You don't care. Is that a male, female? Doesn't matter. Hey, how much melanin is in their skin? Doesn't matter. There's an individual and there's a situation, and I'm trying to assess the individual in the situation. I mean, that seems like how I don't know. I've just watched so many lies, so much gaslighting, and just manipulation used to gain political power and control and to divide the country, to get people so riled up against each other. Get a question from Kenneth. I know this is always one. I think he asked two. He's saying, are you a vet too?
Yeah, that's another story.
Another 2 hours for another time.
The short answer is yes, but honestly, I'll give you the very, very abridged version of that. About 9 months into my military career, I was injured and discharged, disqualified from my physical.
Gotcha. And then the other question that everyone thinks about, honorably. And honorably, that is, yes. The other question that everyone thinks about and occasionally asks, did you ever have to discharge? Because that's obviously something that stays with people. It's fight or flight. You get these horror images stuck in your head. Like no matter what you do and how tough you are, when you're dealing with rough people and rough spots and bad situations and bad people, everybody goes through stuff with PTSD. And on a level of health and fitness, Adam, we're talking about, it's what you eat and your workout. No. It's mental health. It's not just mental fortitude. It's not just intestinal fortitude. It's 1,000 different things. So did you ever have situations where that escalated to that level?
Yes. 2015 officer involved shooting. Some of the things that they talk about, what the officer experiences was very interesting from a personal perspective because I got to see those things firsthand. So, and some of those things that I'm referring to are like auditory exclusion. I never heard my gun go off. And obviously, if you've been around firearms whatsoever, they're very loud.
Yes. Auditory exclusion. You didn't hear the gun go off.
And I could actually see the rounds coming out of the barrel of my gun like it was in slow motion. Like the world just slows down a little bit. It's wild. Like
the Matrix.
Yeah, like the Matrix. Like you can see it just leaving the barrel of your gun. Where if you're at the shooting range, there's no way you're watching that round.
No. That's it. You fired, I don't know how many thousands of rounds in practice. I mean, you have to keep a level of competency, obviously. But yeah, that's not something my usual experience is at the range. I don't watch my rounds leave the barrel and head down. Like it's just bang, bang. It's there. The hole is in the target at that point. No, that is wild.
The other thing they usually ask in the interview is like how many rounds you fired. And I was not correct on that either. I took kind of a shot in the dark When things unfold that quickly, you're just kind of firing until the threat stops, or at least till you have a perceived thought, which you have about a second and a half delay. So it is very possible to fire probably 3 to 4, 4 rounds after that threat is stopped, just because your brain hasn't actually caught up with what the reality of the situation is.
It's just instinct training and reflexes at that point.
Yeah.
I was at Woodstock and I had a moment, and I'd just come off of a knee surgery. You were talking about your injury and leaving the forces. I don't know how you say that. I think that's right. I blew out my knee and I had a knee surgery and I was on crutches for the summer. And then I ended up going to Woodstock 99. And I was there. I don't know if you've seen the documentaries or if you went yourself, but, it was Korn. It was Rage Against the Machine. It was Limp Bizkit. It was a riot, a literal riot. They burned the place down and they tore things apart. And I can tell you that during the Limp Bizkit set, we were 2/3 of the way back off to the right watching the stage. Good spot, but kind of safe. When they came on, I've never seen a mosh pit like this. I'm sure you've seen the videos online. If not, go check out what happened 25 years ago. Hard to believe it's been 25 years, but I'm on a repaired knee. And, I'd been doing some rehab and I wasn't strong on it, not comfortable in trusting it, but I was fighting for it. When this happened, everybody where I was at, we were keeping a strong distance from the mosh pits to be smart and to be safe and prepared. So this is exactly to our point, what we were talking about, preparedness. Well, we thought we had a plan until we didn't. Mike Tyson said that. Yeah, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. So this happened, and the mosh pit went everywhere. And my girlfriend at the time got blasted. Little girl, and I'm on 1.5 wheels trying to get strength back in my knee. And I don't know what happened. I saw it, and it was dangerous, and I let out some kind of noise. I didn't hear it. But we're talking about breath work. Something came out of me. And it was like in the video games where it radiates across in a fan and everything turned into like a Zach Morris timeout on Saved by the Bell. And everything went, phew. Time flipping stopped, Adam. And I looked at her and I went in. I got down, I picked her up, I moved her away and got her safe, and everything went right back to it. And I to this day, I don't know exactly what that was, but as you told that story, I had that exact remembrance of that story. I mean, everything happened so quick.
Fight or flight at a very pronounced, that's fight or flight. That's real fight or flight. And
is there a way to increase our instincts on that? Is there a way to sharpen our tools? Once again, on that little hit point thing on the Dungeons and Dragons, is there a way to level up in that area? Fight or flight awareness and skill and
practicing breath work is probably the most powerful thing that we can do to mitigate fight or flight. Because this is what happens when we breathe, and we're kind of like in this balance of fight or flight and rest and digest at all times. So if a gunman walked into your room right now, your initial reaction would probably be to breathe in or out. What do you think?
Probably to stop. You just hold your breath.
You're going to stop and hold your breath.
Yeah.
But what happens when you, a situation kind of just stops and you're able to relax, right? It's that, right? So think of, if you're trying to remember it, think of being scared. This is your fight or flight. This is your rest and digest. So what we need to do with our breath is we need to start training our bodies in the moment. Not in the moment, excuse me. We need to start training our bodies when we're not in the moment to react a certain way, right? So we don't rise to the level of the situation, we fall to the level of our training, right? So if I'm not practicing pulling my gun out of the holster, sight alignment, trigger press, all that good stuff that goes with firearms, what happens in fight or flight is I lose fine motor skills, and I'm going to have difficulty getting that gun out of my holster if I'm not proficient at getting the gun out of the holster. And the same thing happens with our breath. What I want your body to do is just go into that Zen moment, like right when those things are happening. So you can have a clear head, so you can see what's going on. Because we get tunnel vision, we get auditory exclusion because we're focused so much on what's in front of us and whatever that threat is, that like everything out here doesn't matter. That's why that happens. When you go into a real fight or flight response, usually that threat's right in front of you. And so your vision goes very narrow and slows down, just like it did for you and me. So you can really focus on what's in front of you. Like, what's that person doing with their hands? Where's the gun? Where's the knife? Where's this? Where's that? And then the auditory exclusion, like we're focusing here where we don't care about what's happening over here. But if I'm going into a house and I'm clearing a house, which we did so many times when I was working SWAT, I can't have auditory exclusion and tunnel vision before I make entry into that house. And the best way we do that is we practice a little breath work. And I've been trying to teach SWAT teams this. Do some breath work in the stack so we can kind of relax our physiology. So when we go into a house, we can make good decisions. We can see the guy behind the couch, or we can see that we have an innocent bystander who's sleeping on the chair over here, like whatever the situation is. So, and that's just using our breath and learning how to train that in the moment. So like I teach 3 different types of breath work because I think these are the 3 that are most applicable. The Wim Hof method, which I'll get to in a second, tactical breathing, which is used like, again, in the stack, like when I'm about to go into a stressful situation, I'm learning to control my breath right then and there. And then afterwards, I teach a relaxation technique because you may feel fine 30 to 40 minutes after a fight or flight situation, but on a physiological stress level, you are not. So what's that going to do? It's going to affect your mood. It's going to affect your sleep. It's going to affect, all these things. So then that's going to compound over the next day and the next day and the next day. And then what you end up with is somebody who's super stressed out, who maybe makes a poor decision while they're at work. And if they would have done 3 to 5 minutes of breath work after a stressful incident, we may have been able to alleviate something poor that happened 2 and 3 days down the line.
No, that's God. That's
Wim Hof method. I want to touch on that one.
No, pause right there for a second. I got a couple points, and we'll get right to Wim Hof. There is so much important information in what you were saying there. I had a unique opportunity when I lived in Los Angeles. I was bartending a backyard event and came up, and this lady, we started having a good conversation, and she goes, "Oh yeah, by the way, here's my card. Why don't you give me a call?" I go, "All right, yeah, what's up?" She's like, "I'm a casting director, and I do game shows and this and that." So anyway, long story short, I was supposed to be on Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader, and then Don't Forget the Lyrics, and then I ended up finally on Catch 21 game show with Carlton from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Alfonso Ribeiro. So suddenly, now I'm on this game show, and inside the studio, right there in Hollywood, that neighborhood, I'm trying to remember what it was. It's like a stadium setup. There's bleachers on the right of me. There's bleacher seating on the left of me. There's friggin' Carlton over here. There's some, attractive young lady named Mickey, I believe her name is. And the lights are bright. They are in your face like Large Marge from Pee-wee's Big Adventure is heading right towards you with her semi-truck. And I just distinctly remember, and it's very similar. We're talking about high school football, Adam. You know that feeling going out to a Brunswick football game for the undefeated team on a Friday night. You got bleachers to the right of you. You got bleachers to the left of you, and the bright lights are in your face. And guess what, pal? Everybody's there to see you. Yeah, you're only one of 11. Yeah, you're only out on one side. But they're here to see what you're doing specifically. Thousands and thousands and thousands of them go. And so I remember in that moment, I don't know if it was breath work. It's a form of breath work, but also I had to calm myself down because, then you perspirate and you're like, wait a minute, why am I perspirating? It's cold in here. Well, your body is doing shit physiologically that your hands are sweating. And so now you're fidgeting or now you're wiping. And so, like, I remember, God, by the end, when I got to the final round, because I did win, I didn't win the final grand prize, but I wouldn't have won it anyway. But I remember during that final one, I left the podium and I walked over, and right before we went live, they're playing Biggie and over the loudspeaker, and Carlton's rapping and dropping F-bombs and N-bombs, and my brain is going bonkers. I'm sweating I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying to win $25,000 here. Oh my God, I heard Carlton drop an N-bomb and an F-bomb. I've never seen this in my life. That's Carlton, the Carlton dance. It's not unusual. Like, your brain is processing 1,000 things at once. You're trying to make the most money you've made in one day in your entire life. All of it's happening at once. But I remember having to find a way. I eventually floated outside of myself, Adam. I floated kind of up and out, and I consciously remember not being able to focus on any one thing. And I think that started as just trying to block out the lights. The lights were so damn blinding. I just kind of had to float away from it all, so I didn't let it impact me. And it's if you've never been in law enforcement, you don't know what it's like to burst open a door and assess 1,000 things at once. If you've never been on a game show or on the football, like, you don't know what the lights and the pressure and the stress and the what your physiological response is going to be. There's so much important stuff in what you just said. So I don't know if you had a thought on what I just said about all of that. Like, is that similar to what you were saying about these situations when you had to jump into unknown circumstances? You went through the same stuff, and that's why you focused on the breath work. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I mean, it all comes down to perspective and experience. Like, you haven't worked in law enforcement, so that is, we have different life experiences. So, like, fight or flight's real, whether I'm in a shootout or whether you're nervous about a Friday night football game. The physiological response is the same if that's where the environment and your mental state take it. Like, you're going to have elevated heart rate, elevated blood pressure. You're going to get cotton mouth. You're going to get all these physiological symptoms. And if you don't learn how to and be aware to control those things in the moment, it can definitely take over. And in a situation where you're going into a house, you're trying to make an arrest or whatever it is, we want to make sure we're doing that of the most solid mind that we possibly can, right? Especially where you have a billion things going on. You probably have a victim who's screaming at you, and you're trying to arrest a suspect, and crowds are gathering around, and you're trying to, you're like, you're not trying to violate anybody's Fourth Amendment rights. And there's like a billion different things going on, and you have to be good at all of them, because if you screw up once, you end up on YouTube, and your career ends up getting ruined. Yeah. So oddly enough, I think breath work can save a lot of careers and save a lot of lives, both officers and on the suspect's end.
Oh, we've seen video after video. I have seen video after video of encounters with law enforcement, and I've seen video after video where the person, I just saw one last week. Don't even need to go into the details. But the person began hyperventilating on their own. Now, maybe they were also overdosing in the video. I've seen this over and over again. Sometimes the stress of being pulled over, the stress of, oh crap, I can't go back to jail. What's this now? I can't afford a $500 speeding ticket. In the interactions with law enforcement, if the person on the other side could just take a breath and have an exhale, try that a couple of times, you might be surprised at how the interaction goes. Maybe everything would be fine, but instead the person freaks out. If they're not overdosing on drugs, that's a whole separate situation as well. But yeah, I mean, very few things go better when you start hyperventilating. Very few things are improved.
Yeah, I think we could definitely calm a lot of situations by using a breath. And this may be useful to officers when you have a suspect who's kind of just, hey man, just take a breath. Let's calm down. The vast majority of officers I've met in my career do not want to fight, do not want to use their taser, their firearm, because when you truly do it all the time, you understand how things can go poorly. One slip up on we get into a physical altercation, no firearms involved, but guess what? there's always a firearm involved because I'm carrying one. So if
Always.
that person decides in that moment they don't want to go back and now I have a fight for my gun, like we're trying to prevent that. Like we understand that's a real possibility, which is why we don't want to fight. We really don't. I would prefer you just go peacefully. And it is,
and
to be honest,
I watched that. I'm sorry. Finish your thought. I was going to add something. Go ahead.
Well, when you come out on the other side, it's exciting. Like it's an exciting situation because it's a fight or flight adrenaline dump. And so when you're done, like you're kind of amped up on your fight or flight chemicals, your adrenaline, your norepinephrine up, like you're kind of in an excitable mood because you're like, damn man, like things could have gone bad. Now I'm here. And I've seen officers on body cams like say some things they probably shouldn't have said, not because it's who they are, it's because we're kind of excited that we didn't die. We're excited that we came out on top, right?
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is.
Oh, yeah.
Also, we have like kind of dark sense of humor. It's part of the job. It's how you get through your careers to kind of making fun of stuff that's maybe not as, not so couth, but most guys don't mean anything by what they're saying. It's just kind of our form of humor. And I think a lot of it's, kind of taken out of context. And just
how many times have we seen a TV show? God, I feel like every show dealing with law enforcement has that scene where they go into the thing and it's them and their partner investigating the thing. And there's the guy in the morgue and he's eating his sandwich, doing the autopsy, eating his sandwich. Like, because that is how it is. When that is your life every day, yeah, you got your sense of humor and you got your, your reality is now just different. There's no way that you can go back to being normal. But the thought I was normal, I say, just it's when you're in this stuff, swimming around it all day, obviously every human develops a unique way of dealing with it and coping with it. And my God, it seems like an undoable job, law enforcement it is. I couldn't imagine intentionally going into that these days. And who knows, that might have played a significant role, if not an insignificant role, in your decision to not stay in that field. But I was going to mention that cortisol, I definitely, when you have a cortisol dump, when your energy gets fired up like that, that's what you were talking about. When, if you have a couple of these incidents, you're saying the cortisol and that you said norepinephrine, that this stuff builds.
Adrenaline, your noradrenaline, adrenaline dump.
And it accumulates in you. And if you don't flush it, it's making it potentially worse each next time. It just kind of keeps raising the level to tilt. Is that, were you alluding to that, or did I read too much?
The adrenaline and the norepinephrine, like that's going to be like a fight or flight situation. Your cortisol levels it fluctuates all day, every day. Like if you go through a week and everything's just normal, you probably won't ever have an adrenaline dump. But your cortisol fluctuates because it goes up in the morning because that's part of what wakes us up, is your cortisol level goes up. At night it goes down because then it allows for melatonin production so you can get a good night's sleep. This is why like de-stressing before bed is extremely important, because cortisol and melatonin are they're aligned. Not aligned, aligned is the wrong word, but they work opposite of one another. And if one is up, the other one's down. If one's down, the other one's up. So we want to make sure that we're getting those cortisol levels down so we can sleep better at night. And of course, we know that sleep's linked to better cognitive function, which is going to lead to better decisions the following day.
Kenneth is adding, he's asking the question, so you didn't make Carl tons of money? Carl tons of money? No, man, look, I made, what was it, 5 or 6? I think I made $6,000 that day. That was a good day. I didn't get the 25, but it literally wasn't in the cards. If I picked the final card instead of walking away with my money, I wouldn't have got the 25 anyway. So yeah, I did make Carl tons of money. Thank you very much. Also, we were talking about that most cops that probably want to go home peacefully, want to get through every interaction peacefully. Now, you're not saying all cops, you're saying most cops. And it's just, I just find it so regrettable. Why some people watched that Floyd video from a few years ago, but they saw one part of it and they kind of kept hearing what everybody kept repeating about it. But very few people went to the video that started. I think there was a second video in a second body cam where he was at the store and then they walk over and the guy's in the car and He's already saying, I can't breathe. You can hear him hyperventilating or overdosing, however that situation played out. And it's like, they got him arrested. They put him in the back of the cop car. My God, if that other damn door was already just closed instead of open, he wouldn't have wiggled out onto the, like, he just would have been arrested and that was it. That's all the intention was for that moment. And because that other door wasn't closed, they took that, they being the media, they being one political party, they took that and twisted that to demonize all people in law enforcement and make it seem like, oh my gosh, they're hunting. Oh, it's out of control. Defund the police. It didn't match the reality of the circumstance. There's alternate realities in my head where different things could have happened. I would love to see the universe where that moment never happened and we never knew that guy's name because that second door was closed and he was just taken to be processed, or he had an overdose and that happened in detention and he was whatever. But that brings up, Kenneth was also asking, did you wear a body cam? Because when I
was on patrol, we didn't have body cams. I carried a voice recorder, which benefited me multiple times in my career from people trying to make false complaints, because that's generally what happens. I feel like more officers get saved by body cams and recorders than they get jammed up by them. I was very pro body cam. And there's a couple of reasons why I didn't care for the body cams. One, I'm a big fan of turning them off. And if you're talking to your partner, especially about tactics or like maybe some details of the investigation that, you don't want on YouTube before it's out, like, I'm okay with officers going back to their car, turning off the body cam so they can talk kind of freely about some tactics or like maybe some gross details on a situation that like the public really just doesn't need to know. But use it in situations like that. The other thing is, if anybody can download body cam footage, it's public record. So if I was a criminal and knew that the police came to your house for a noise complaint, let's say you're a rich guy in Beverly Hills, you have, a huge mansion and your alarm goes off, police go in and sweep the house. Well, guess what? I can download that body cam and now I have the entire layout of your house. So just something the public doesn't really think about.
Yeah. I always thought, like, I always said you shouldn't be able to turn them off, but it shouldn't be public record. They should all like stay at the department and they should burn themselves after X amount of days. Like if there wasn't a situation that called for anything, to specially highlight. But yeah, nobody wants to hear you in the bathroom stall taking a dump or, talking to your wife or a private conversation that has nothing to do with anything and it's nobody's business. There is a bit of a fine line to, like, there's no need to broadcast all sorts of things that are irrelevant. But I never wanted, I forgot to turn it on, or, I must have tapped it off. And it's like that part didn't work for me. But yeah, I think you're right. I think the body cam has probably defended and protected more law enforcement than it has caught rogue cops in the act of being rogue. I think that's, like, I don't know if there's any data on that, but like, that's my suspicion. I don't know.
I'm sure there is. I'm not aware of the data. And to touch on your point with, like, it's just a button on the body cam. So they're really easy. When you get in close with somebody in a wrestling match or whatever, if something hits it, that body cam's turning off. They get knocked off real easily because they're just clipped on. Just like I've had my radio thrown in fights. You get your ass thrown in fights. Like, this isn't Law and Order where like you run the guy down and then he trips and you're like, okay, we're time to go to jail now. And like, they just like willingly go. Like, that's not the reality of it. Usually there's ensues if I'm chasing you on foot. And then you have to worry about all your gear and everything with it. So a lot of the situations I've seen, and also when you get that 911 call, this kind of, if I'm eating my lunch and we're like, hey, you have a gunman, and you're like, oh shit, I gotta go. It's very possible that you forgot to turn on your body cam because you're not focused on this. You're focused on what's on your computer screen in the radio calls coming through. And especially when body cams were newer, like you're not in the habit of using them yet. So a lot of guys would just forget because of life for a little while. So there's a lot of legitimate reasons why people would forget to turn it on. You know, they don't turn it off, or like it goes off. Like, yeah, it's possible, you know, while you're rolling around the ground, it probably did go off because it's just a button.
Yeah. And so I think that really even more so just fully solidifies my opinion that I think police body cams, when you sign in to clock in that day before you roll out in the vehicle, however that works, you pick up your thing, you toss it on, it's already on and it cannot be turned off till the end of your shift. But then, like I said, that stuff needs to be protected. Lockbox, a black box, every outhouse, hen house, and farmhouse, whatever kind of box protects that information. You know, that should not be released unless. But yeah, I just remember that Kelly Thomas case. I don't know if you remember that one out in, what was that, Fullerton, California?
I don't remember a lot of details, but I remember that was a pretty bad on law enforcement from what I recall.
It was the worst I've ever seen, and they got off. It was really bad. But anyway, we don't need to dwell on the negativity of that. But back to the thing about being nervous and the physiological response. I remember back to the football field. I remember just that feeling, that energy. You feel it like kind of a few ribs down from the throat and kind of right as the rib cage, like right in here. If you tense up and hold your breath and you flex your ab muscle, like it's right in there. That's the place where you feel nervous. Like you said, if you had to use it, what would you do? You'd probably hold your breath and then you start feeling it right there. But I learned during football real quick to take that energy, and it was a simple mental shift for me. And you know, you said you were an undersized football player. I don't think there were many 5'10", 188 defensive ends who were going up against 6'7", 285 behemoths and doing a good job. However, you know, that's the type of person I had to fight on that offensive line for myself. But when I was able to take nervous, and just say, I'm excited. Go like this and tense up in that same stomach area and go, oh, I'm excited. Oh, I get to go to the thing. I'm at a concert. I get to go to, I'm going to go play paintball today. I'm going to the range today. Oh, I get to have sex. Whatever it is that like gets people excited, you go, yeah. If you tense up, it's that same exact area. So if you just tell yourself, I'm excited, that's the same thing your mind could process and convert to. You hold your breath, you clench, and you go, I'm nervous. Oh, God. I'm nervous. Oh, I'm nervous. And you go, no, I'm excited. There's no change in the physiology. It's all in how you perceive it. I don't know if you had to teach mindset that way, but to me, that worked wonders for me.
Yeah, so part of the Wim Hof method is it's mindset, breath, and cold exposure. So those are the three elements.
Mindset, breath, cold exposure.
Yep. And mindset's extremely important, and you illustrated it very well with your explanation. A very small switch on how you look at something can change the entire dynamic of the situation. And what else? You know what else that does is it creates a little memory of how you handle that situation. And then when you do it over and over and over again, it just becomes your go-to response. And these are the kind of things that I'm trying to teach our first responders with the Wim Hof method, is that if we shift our mindset a little bit, we learn how to stress our bodies out with the breath work, because the Wim Hof breathing technique actually elicits a fight or flight response on a physiological level. And then we just learn how to like kind of calm that down. And then the cold exposure, the last component of it, adds an external stimulus. So what happens when you get into ice cold freezing water? You want to do this, right? Right? Like you start to panic with your breath. And if you learn the technique of how to control that and control your mindset and your physiological response with an external stressor, and we do that over and over and over again, it just becomes your response. And that's what I'm trying to train other people to do.
No, that's a really good point. I remember I was out on Lake Erie. That's for those of y'all not initiated, it's the large body of water in the Great Lakes that borders Cleveland, Ohio. And I remember going back there one time with a buddy, and we took jet skis out, and they were capsizing and flipping over. And we didn't know it was a small craft advisory that day, maybe a little bit of lack of planning. But went out and had a life jacket on, and he had a life jacket on, and it was just like, okay, well, look, this thing is going to flip. The engine is flooding. This isn't going to work. We can't get this back. He's like, I'm going to go this way. You swim back this way, and we'll meet on the shore. Because it's like it couldn't handle multiple people at the time. I'm like, okay. And so I jumped off, and he took off, and I started swimming. Put my head down. I'm kicking. I'm swimming. Got my life jacket on. I'm swimming. All right. Do this for a little bit. I, head down. I'm just doing the breath work, like just kind of focused on, I'm just working every few arm movements. I'm going to grab a breath of air. And after a little bit, I looked up, and I was in the same spot I was when I started. And I freaked the fork out. By the way, Adam, I'm doing a great job eliminating the casual swearing that is so proficient in the Agree to Disagree shows. I just wanted to point that out for everybody. I'm trying to keep it clean in case you wanted to repurpose some of this video. But I freaked out, and everything clenched, and I could feel my elbows coming into my body. I could feel like it was not an intentional reaction. It was, tap that little triangle on the knee, and your knee does that. This was just a reflex. And I quickly realized that this was not going to lead to anything good. And I also realized I'm wearing a life jacket. Thank God, because that probably saved my life, or at least played a huge role in saving my life. And I said to myself, quickly, calm down. Relax every muscle I had just contracted in on itself. What did George Costanza say on that Seinfeld episode? Like a frightened turtle. It just shrunk back into yourself. All of my muscles and I said, relax. And I had to unwind every muscle and just let them contract, because they were locked. All of the joints locked, and I was going to sink if I wasn't wearing that vest. Once I calmed down, I took a breath. I took another breath. And I said, all right, it's okay. You're okay. You got a life jacket on. Get back to work. And I just got back to work, and I eventually made my way back to shore. But my mind looked up and said, oh, my God, there's no way you're going to make this. You're going to drown. Everything at once. And I clenched. And it was just something that I had in me to help that situation. It made all the difference in the world. That's probably how most people react, right? Just that clench.
Yeah, and it probably feels about 10 minutes when in reality it's like for 3 to 5 seconds. But in my former line of work, 3 to 5 seconds may be the difference between going home and going to a funeral. So you talked about preparation earlier. We need to prepare ourselves for battle. Most officers go their entire career without drawing their firearm, which is a great thing. And I always said, because I worked in a dangerous area, that I was actually safer than, let's say, like a Brunswick or a Strongsville, Ohio, because I was prepared for battle every day mentally. There was probably not a week that went by where I didn't have to draw my firearm several times in one fashion or another. Now, granted, I've only had to fire very limited amount, but there was a lot of situations that arose where that was normal for me and normal for a lot of people that I worked with. And if you're not used to that, if you're in a very upscale community and something goes south, you may not be prepared for that type of situation. And we have to be. It's very easy to get complacent, and complacency is what kills us.
Oh, absolutely. And continuing on that thread of finding a way to get through a situation that might stress people out. I've been doing videos with the New American Media for 13 years. I've talked to presidential candidates, at Grammy Award winners, Emmy winners. Like you're talking to people like, oh my God, I grew up listening to you. I grew up watching you. I have every one of your albums. I voted for you. Every variety of that, I've gone through it. And so when you're in a situation that's stressful or intimidating, it is so important. The only reason I'm successful in those opportunities, well, one is muscle memory. Like you said, the more you do it, the more you're comfortable doing it. But every time it's partially stepping back from yourself and not getting the tunnel vision. You can't see the forest for the trees. You're locked in on a tree or a bush or a shrub. It's like, step back, look at the landscape, go back a few miles and see the rolling hills. Look at the depth perception. Like, you're missing so much because people get fixated on those things that are really tight. And, you know, it really is a secret to success in life. It's not just about accomplishing a task and drawing and hitting a target. It's not about getting a good interview. It's not about having a good tackle or a touchdown on the playing field. It's really everywhere. And it's so easy to kind of get wrapped up. The new American media wouldn't be anything without social media, because the old American media failed. But like, I remember the meta programs when they came out, they were messing with people to feed them negative algorithms to see if it could mess with their energy, if it could make them angrier, if more anger leads to more clicks, the rage bait, the clickbait. We are being gently and obviously manipulated on a daily basis, second to second. People are vying for our eyeballs, for our dollars, for our attention, for our clicks, for our views, for our likes. It's nonstop surrounding us. You mentioned something about the Wim Hof method, about at nighttime. How do you cleanse at night? I understand what it means to jump into a oval shaped thing full of ice, and you can just click. Right now, I see Rogan going. Like, I just saw that video in my mind's eye. I've never done it. You've probably done this. Let me guess. We're probably into hundreds of times. Probably.
Yeah, that's a pretty safe bet. Yeah.
Okay. Now at nighttime, I don't think we're going to be jumping into that ice barrel for most of us. But I think you were alluding to there's something we can do at the end of our days to, like, kind of cleanse, maybe light the sage and get rid of that energy in the space. Is there something we could do or should be doing? Like, or something you've been doing, and when did you learn how to do it? To walk us through
I would say shut your electronics off is probably the number one thing. But if you're talking about what we can do, like, outside of that, I use a relaxation breath technique. So we talked earlier about, like, fight or flight response. Like, breath in is your, sympathetic nervous system activating, like that fight or flight, and your breath out is that parasympathetic activating, like your rest and digest. If you get a 1-to-2 ratio, so let's say you breathe in 3 seconds, out for 6, 4, 8, 5, 10, whatever it is, you're going to start triggering that rest and digest response. And if you can do that for just 5-10 minutes, at the end of your day.
So it's 4 seconds in, 8 seconds out. So like 4 seconds in, 8 seconds out. All right. So practically speaking, can we walk through something I could do right now, along with you and the people watching and the people that will watch later? Like, because I need to build the muscle memory of how to do this. I feel like I watch videos and then I do it for a couple days. Then I go, wait, is that, or is that pause and hold? Is it double? Like, my head kind of forgets what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, we'll do it real simple. We'll go about 3 rounds of it. We're going to do 3 in through the nose, hold at the top for 3, out for 6, and then cycle back through 3 times.
Okay. Say that one more time. So we breathe in, chop, chop, chop 3 times.
In through the nose. So in 1, 2, 3. Hold 3 seconds. Out 6. And then cycle back.
Okay, so that's 3 seconds in, not 3 1-second bursts in. It's just
right. 3 seconds in, 3 second hold, 3 seconds.
Because one of those is choppy breathing, like, or right, like it's chop 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 or chop chop out, in or out, but that's not what we're doing, right?
That's a completely different form of breath work, completely different outcome is what you're looking for. So this one's it's real simple to remember, and it's really easy to do, and it doesn't take that long. So again, we're just 3 seconds in and out. If you do like 2 or 3 rounds, and then you'll actually be able to feel your physiology relaxing.
I think it makes for awesome radio to be silent. I felt my arms tingling right away on the first one.
Feel a little more relaxed though?
Yes, a little lightheaded, kind of hungry. I feel way better. But of course, when I'm doing this,
rest and digest. When you're in a stressful state, your body is not meant to be digesting food, which is why we get cotton mouth when we're stressed out. Because saliva is a function of digestion, and if we don't need it, because our body doesn't produce saliva. So when you actually relax, then it tells your body that, hey, I can digest food now. And if you haven't eaten in a little while, you may realize you're hungry.
Oh, I just got hungry. It's also that time of day, and I haven't eaten a bite all day because I'm doing a little bit of intermittent fasting, trying to work on that a little bit. Once again, go to tourdepatriot.com for more information with Adam Boyd about his 1,200 mile bike tour across the United States, original 13 colonies this September 3 through 28. You can get more information on that website, tourdepatriot.com. No, that's good. So that's a good one. Everybody can do at the end of the day as they're winding down at night. How long do they need to do that for? How many? 3 in, hold it for 3, let it go for 6. How many reps? We did 3. How often should people do that?
5 to 10 minutes.
Oh, do it for that long, not a couple. Just do it for 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, because it'll take you a few minutes to like kind of still your thoughts and get settled in. And then, of course, once you get to that point where you're settled in, we want to make sure that that's when the repetitions start. We want to make sure we're getting those repetitions. So if you do 3 to 5, it's going to relax you like initially, but really to truly calm the mind and calm the body, we're going to need a little bit longer so we can settle in and then start getting those reps.
I like that. I think that's something I want to start trying. So now, would you consider that to be an altered state? Like, do you even start to, because there's a meditative component, like you said, you got to clear your thought. Now you're past breath work. You're into full on meditation. Accept the thoughts that roll into your head. Everybody has thoughts. Let's see them like clouds. See the thought you just had as a cloud, but watch it float over you and past you. Acknowledge it and let it go. Release it, even blow it away if you must. And if you get another thought, acknowledge it as a cloud and watch it blow past you. That's how it was described to me. And I'm like, oh, I like that. It's not like, how do I not think a thought? I can't do that shit. I don't even know how to not have a thought, but I can acknowledge it and go, oh, I just thought about that Fall Out Boy song that's been stuck in my head about sitting on the other side of the apocalypse. Oh, yeah, I don't know why that's stuck in my head. Okay, that's a thought. Let it go. Let it go. Okay, so does it get into an altered state? Is it a meditation? Is it just breath? Is there any differentiation between all of these things? Because I feel like after a few of these, you could enter a wipe off the on the pineal gland, and now you might be absorbing all sorts of stuff from God knows where, because there's that act of meditation or prayer, as people call it, and I don't know. I think breath is intertwined completely into that.
Yeah, I think they're very intertwined with one another. I think it would be really difficult outside of tactical breathing. It would be very difficult to do breath work without incorporating some mindset and mindfulness into it.
Yeah, I wonder how many people feel more of a benefit spiritually, their clarity, like maybe the ability to take their day and put it into Tetris pieces and deal with it, versus the physiology. Do you have like a primary place that you feel it the most when you do the breath work, and knowing that that's such a part of the stuff that you do out there with your coaching?
I just do it right on the couch. I don't have like a special spot for it. I also feel like, and this is my personal opinion, I feel like wherever I do it also gives that room, I give a familiarity with that space to be like, this is a calm area, like the living room should be. Like I don't work in the living room, which usually like a relaxation area anyway. You watch TV, you hang out and chat with your friends or your spouse or whoever, and it's a good place to do meditation. And I know a lot of people have like a section of their house or a room like set aside. You can do crystals and candles or like sage, and it's really a personal preference on like how far you want to take it and what you want to incorporate.
No, absolutely. You remember? Did you ever see Bad Boys with Martin Lawrence? And what does he do? He rubs his ears.
Woosah.
Yeah, he rubs his temple or his ears or something.
Right? Yeah.
Woosah. Kenneth is saying, "Calm blue ocean, calm blue ocean, calm blue ocean." Yeah. So I guess Kenneth, he's asking, do you meditate? And I guess there's no way to you can't unscramble the eggs of breath work and meditation. It's one and the same, I suppose, is the easy answer, right? Not the answer for you. But is there a different level of meditation?
Without doing a specific type of breath work. Sometimes I'll just put on a video, like a sound bath, or whatever the different frequencies, and I'll just focus on my thoughts. But usually when I do breath work, I also meditate. But I can do meditation without breath work.
Okay. Fair enough. I get that. So with your health and wellness coaching and stuff that you're doing separate from Tour De Patriot, where would people find information about you? And you're in what area? Like, can you just explain to people about what you provide and like how you work with them and set up the plan? Like, tell us about that aspect of things.
Individuals, like, so you go to www.soulfultraining.com, and it's soulful like the sole of your foot. SOLEFUL training. I don't generally work with a lot of individuals. It's a lot of like small group stuff. Like this Sunday, I have a Wim Hof workshop in Gilbert. I'm probably going to set one up in Cleveland when I'm there in July. It's taking, like, I did the Wim Hof method for the Air Force. I went out to Edwards Air Force Base, did a 2-day workshop for them. I've done it for a couple other police departments. So it really just kind of takes me wherever I need to go. We started doing retreats. So like I ran my first winter retreat in January. A group of us went out to Colorado. We did some personal development, some team building. The Wim Hof method I usually incorporate into almost everything I do. And just kind of, I'm also trying to create unique events. I created an event called Beer Miles and Tacos, which is a big success. I ran that here in my hometown in March.
That sounds good.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. People really enjoyed it. Like they ran like a lap, drank a beer, ate a taco. It's kind of a little variation of the Beer Mile. Nobody's out there trying to qualify for Boston. They're just out there, have a good time, have some drinks, eat some food, run a little bit and create some memories,
No, that's good. I like your quote on the website we have pulled up here on the screen. It's soulfultraining.com. That's SOLE, soulfultraining.com. Your quote from Steve Jobs, "Your time is limited. Don't waste it living someone else's life." That is pretty good. All right. So Patagonia, Arizona, if you're interested in working with Adam, rather, maybe some small groups, if you want to get some. Well,
I will work on one-on-one on a limited basis. Those are usually people that want to do big things. You want to run your first marathon, you want to do an Ironman, you want to do, whatever big accomplishment you're after. I am working on a project called the Iron Misogi. If you're not familiar, a Misogi is a Japanese ritual, like kind of rooted from Shinto practices, where it's like a spiritual cleansing, but there's also this like pilgrimage attached with it. So the basics of the event is going to be, I'm going to have you do something really, really, really hard. And then once you get to camp, we're going to do like 3 or 4 days of mindfulness and Wim Hof and personal development and connection. And I have a really awesome ceremony built out for the end of it. Everybody that attends is going to get a war hammer, which I think is a really cool way to end a retreat.
A war hammer?
A war hammer, what? Yeah. Like,
how big?
Because you're going to have to go through some stuff to get to camp. Like, it's going to be hard.
go through. So like you gotta hold on, wait. You get a hammer and it's like Legend of Zelda, and you gotta bang on the place where you see the crack in the, and you gotta burst through a stone wall. You gotta get
No,
through a
that's gonna be
mountainside to go into
your
a
like
cave.
Heisman Trophy. Like I was trying to think of something really cool that you could get, like like a certificate, but way better. And I was like, how do I make something memorable like that? Especially guys, like what would you want to like hang on your wall? And then a buddy of mine he like makes custom jewelry, and he posted on Instagram that he makes these war hammers. And I was like, dude, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. What does it cost? And like he tells me, I was like, yeah, like if you come to the Misogi, like you're getting a warhammer as like the end ceremony, like here you go. And then you get to go hang that warhammer, like custom engraved everything, and you could put that on your wall. And that's kind of, I wanted to make this event where like, and this is not probably how it's going to work. I'm just spitballing here because I don't have details built out yet. I'll have them shortly. But let's say you get dropped off at a checkpoint, and then you got to make your way like 30, 35 miles to the camp using a compass and a map. And then when you get there, then we're going to have like a little ceremony for like the completion of that. And then we're going to do the weekend. And then there's going to be the overall ceremony where we're going to do like a water cleansing and like this spiritual journey. And then you'll get presented your Warhammer.
How big is this warhammer? You said jewelry. Is it something you put on a
necklace?
No, it's going to be. Or is it a damn hammer? It's a What? So like he smelts down like aluminum cans and forges them into a like he's got a.
I don't know how he makes. I don't know how he makes them. I just
like are they real hammers that you can use to
I mean,
they're real hammers.
I mean, if you want to, yeah.
Is it an MC hammer? Too legit to quit the course? Too legit to quit the course. It's an MC hammer now. No, that does sound interesting.
Throw in like MC Hammer references like all throughout the the journey.
Well, you got to learn a couple of lines and just spit out a line. Yeah. What was the Addams Family? Didn't he do the Addams Family theme? I don't think that would fit. Maybe the others. Too legit to quit. One final thing before we start wrapping this up here, I wanted to talk about you said kind of the point of this. Yes, it's an idea. Yes, it's fun, but the partners you're working with, the funds that you're trying to get, what is it you're looking for specifically, the money that's like, what's it going to go to, that type of thing. But I wanted to ask really quick back to one more housekeeping question that I jotted down. I told Adam beforehand that this is what I do. And it's been a while. I've done the Agree to Disagree show with Blake for probably 14, 15 months with the reboot. We've got like 13 years of shows, but like lately on this software and this program, I really don't take notes in this modern format, but when I do one-on-ones with other people. So for today, talk about being prepared for things and I said, I jot all these things down. And if I don't, my brain can't keep all the thoughts organized. And so breath work probably helps for someone like me who was on Ritalin and attention deficit disorder. They didn't call it that. They just called it hyperactive, but it's a super productive brain that just keeps going with awesome stuff all day. It's not the worst thing, but anyway, one point that I wanted to drill down on and ask a little bit more of, and maybe you incorporate some of it into your training, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I don't do MMA. I don't do BJJ. I appreciate it. I never did wrestling in high school. Of course, I did football, which is a lot of it's torque and tension and a lot of kinesiology. It's really to be a successful, productive defensive end, you've got to navigate around 300 pounders, and you got to be quick. You got to be agile. You have to have plan, and you set them up with moves. And then this move looks exactly like the other one, so you trick them. But like on your force, starting in the military, going into law enforcement, and now doing into like personal training and some of these extreme tests of physical skill and mental capability, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and that type of thing. I've always said that law enforcement severely needs BJJ to be mandatory and repeated, concurrent, ongoing training. I've seen too many situations where unprepared officers end up getting manhandled because they don't know how to handle a situation, twist, torque, hips, like the right rotation to get somebody in the right spot to quickly get them cuffed and stop a situation. I see people out of their depth, and when it's a sloppy takedown, it's a sloppy handcuffing. God, I won't bore you, but I've seen more awful videos trying to cover the news than I would ever dare to repeat and report. I'd never repeat the stuff I've seen, and it's awful. So just on that particular point, with your training that you're currently working on and your time in the force, did they teach BJJ? Did you ever get into the MMA style of training? And is that anything that you incorporate now? I know that's very different from riding bikes and running a marathon, but I don't know your experience in that, because it's always seemed like it should be mandatory to me.
It should be, and you do a fair amount of it in the academy. The problem is it goes away, and it's something that you run into a whole host of issues. I mean, this is kind of, I'll try to touch on some of the main points. Well, you run into staffing issues. Like departments all across this country are having difficulty even getting officers on the road. So then you got to deal with paying a qualified instructor to teach them. Then you need the time, you need the location, you need, all of these things. Then you have to worry about, like, if it's outside their normal duty hours, do you pay them? What happens if people get hurt? Is it a workman's, like, there's all these factors that go into it. With all that being said, it absolutely should be, we should be practicing it on our own. I had a martial arts background. I won a couple big tournaments when I was in college. I didn't practice as much as I should have when I was in law enforcement, but I still practiced. And now I live in a very small town right now near the Mexican-Arizona border, and I'm looking for some people in town to practice jiu-jitsu with, because I am not qualified to teach it. I know very little, but I would still like to just implement it as part of just a general practice. I think it's an amazing martial art, and I think it's something that we should all do.
I gotta say, I like your ability to offer other opinions, counterpoints to policy positions or arguments, however you'd phrase it. Like when I brought up, the body cams, and you're like, yeah, well, this situation, and in that case, these are some of the reasons why that's not a good idea. Just now, you're like, well, yes, in theory, but what if they get injured doing it? Who has to pay? Like, just right off the bat, it's not, you're not responding in a defensive way in any way. Like, you're adding really important context to some of these issues, like instantaneously. So really just a gold star for that. Just it's rare that you find someone that's so on point. It's not like you work for Nabisco, so suddenly I'm talking about wheat thins, and I got all my talking points on wheat thins lined up. One thing to have like talking points on something that you're financially invested in. It's another to just have the knowledge. So just gold star there. I noticed that, and I appreciate that. You mentioned where you're at. You're in a small community. We've talked about preparedness. You're near the border. You said a border town. You're in a border state in an area of the country. And we're guessing somewhere around 20 million people in the past 3 years have come in from parts unknown. How would one be prepared? Because they're being bussed. They're being flown everywhere. Who knows what type of underground network of transportation? To what end are all these military-aged men entering this country right now? Just as far as preparedness, I'm glad you mentioned that. I didn't even have it in my stack of questions because I'm not asking questions. We're just having a conversation. Talk to us about that for a second. Like, are you seeing in your local community things that we should all be paying attention to or looking out for? Is there stuff anywhere USA, stuff to be better prepared in case, this whole new term of migrant crime? It's a separate category of just people who snuck in. They didn't follow the procedures, the paperwork, the processes. Shocking. The people that broke the law might continue to break the law. Just tell us about your thoughts on that from a preparedness point of view, because you've had to have seen more stuff working on the reservation and just in the past couple of years outside of the force than a lot of us in central points in the country.
Oddly enough, being here, we have mountains on both sides, so like it's not an easy route. So we don't generally get a lot of migrants that come through. Although, like, I went out on a hike this morning and there's a sign that said like, you may run into, illegal activity, and we have border patrol around. But like, it really hasn't been an issue that's affected my town. Although if you go 18 miles, down the road, Nogales, Arizona, Nogales, Mexico are right there. And there's definitely some issues, not quite as big as we've seen in Texas and California and some other areas, but definitely an issue. As far as preparedness goes, I would say just be prepared to defend your family. Big Second Amendment proponent, and what goes along with that is like the responsibility of understanding the law, understanding the castle doctrine, understanding like what you can and can't do to defend your family and your property. Because we had a farmer or a rancher just nearby that, he just got, it was a mistrial. The government said they're not going to retry him. But you know what?
Wait, hold on. That fell off. I apologize. I'm bursting in. I'm not making a note and following up. I'm jumping right in here. Okay, because that's a story we covered, and in the course of my, I don't know, I didn't set it to follow up, but I said I need a resolution to this story. Will the district attorney decide that and make a definitive with prejudice? We will not, in case they overthrow him and put another DA and then they come back out. Is there any double jeopardy? Like, are you saying that the DA has now released this man with prejudice? They cannot, or that he will not? Do you know the specific on that? Because like that is a huge
I don't know
story.
if they dismissed it with or without prejudice. I just know the statement from the DA said they're not going to retry him.
Okay.
I'm hoping they dismissed with prejudice, just for the sake of this man and his family. I mean, he's in his 70s.
Give him his life back. He didn't ask for what happened. Man,
and the fact that he was held on a ridiculous bond when we have violent criminals, real violent criminals that are being released in cities all over this country is a travesty. That this 70-year-old rancher had to sit a year in prison awaiting this trial. It had his entire life upended for something that he was just trying to defend his home and his family. And, for those that are trying to may run into the same situation, understanding like what you can and can't do to defend yourself. So you don't find yourself in that situation. It goes right back to preparedness. We know that we can't defend our property, or if you don't know, you can't defend your property with lethal force. But if I have somebody in my house, you can easily articulate, I was afraid for my life, right? Like that's pretty reasonable. That's what the standard is. Would a reasonable person believe that they were afraid for their life? And if you think that's the case, which I think at 2:00 in the morning, if I have somebody breaking into my house, it's reasonable. I'm afraid for my life. I can.
Bro, 2:00 in the afternoon. If I didn't invite you in here, you have got a malicious intent. I've never had the mailman or the Omaha steak delivery guy burst through my back door. Not a single time has somebody delivering me a baseball card that I ordered off of eBay. Never have they jumped through my walls, through a door, through a window like the Kool-Aid man with good intentions. Nobody breaks in with good intentions. Yeah, reasonable people. And the castle doctrine and knowing what you can and cannot do. That rancher case, and when we talked about it, it's tough because when we do shows, we're juggling between 6 or 7 different stories, and we got 20 different tabs open, and we're trying to have the conversation and put it all together. That one was, refresh my memory real quick as we wrap this up, Adam. There were multiple people on his property and they had weapons and they aimed it, or at least that was the accusation. It wasn't just, hey, there's someone walking across my yard, you darn kids, and they blew him away. Like, wasn't that the story? I don't have instant recall on all the details, but as I recall,
I don't either actually, and I don't want to speak unintelligently about the situation. So
okay, perfect.
I don't really have a ton of details.
Perfect. We'll pause it there because as Blake and I discussed it, I had said to him the same thing I said to you. I go, I don't have all. I can remember bits and pieces of the case, but I don't claim to be the expert. But anyway, yeah, I mean, we could instantly find ourselves in a weird situation, and situational awareness is key. Breath work as well. I'm really going to do that, Adam. I think I'm going to give 5-10 minutes at the end of the day and see if it makes a difference. I'm going to dedicate myself today because of this episode. Because of soulful training. Soulful training? Did I get the name right? Soulful.
You see my logo on Instagram. Please follow along.
Yes, absolutely. But I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that, and I will report back. And I do hope we can bring you back on again to kind of discuss as we get closer to September and provide some updates. And once again, to continue, we're talking about a plan to go ride bikes across the 13 colonies. You need to get your brown beauty, of course. But yeah, I mean, there's a million things to talk about, trying to level people up. I think at the core of what you're doing, Adam, it's trying to get people to level up a little bit, right? And we're probably all capable of being a little bit better, a little bit stronger, a little bit wiser, a little bit more focused, and it's all interconnected. There's no one without the other. Is that fair to say? Kind of what's driving you?
Fair to say. Yeah, I think we're all. I really want to look at Adam today like a bum. In 5 years, I'm going to be like, man, Adam when he was 42 sucked. Hey, when I'm 53, Adam at 47 sucked. And so on and so forth. Like, it's just, I think it's a continuous journey of like improving and getting better. And, part of the reason I'm doing this tour is I really wanted to show what one person can do. And I think a big show of endurance and, something making a big splash, maybe inspire others to do the same thing. And, I want to do some good with this tour, everything. So if you're a corporate sponsor, we obviously got to fund, hotels, rental cars, flight. There's a lot of cost that goes into this thing. So corporate sponsorship can really help with that. If you donate anything over the cost of putting on the event, I've partnered with a nonprofit that gives back to military and first responders. So I'm going to be making sure that like we're also donating to a good cause at the end of this thing as well. The other way you can buy, I have a $99 program on there. If you buy the program, that's another way to support this initiative. If you buy the program, you'll get entered into a drawing to win a free wellness retreat, which I've been running up in Durango, Colorado. So I'm giving away 3 spots for that. And then, again, I'm going to, almost all the proceeds that we have going forward, like after the cost of putting on the event and all that stuff is going to go to a good cause.
No, that is great. We've talked for a while now. And I still have about 1,000 questions. So many questions about the logistics, like you're not even a biker. Like final question. Let me try to wrap this into a final question. Let you get out of here. Planning the route, Adam. Just planning the route. You're just comfortable. You feel good about. There's cars. There's vehicles. You haven't seen these routes. You don't know the roads and just the pure logistical standpoint. You're just ready to go. You got the instinct. Like, what are you doing to map it out? Exactly what we know how to find the old taverns, but the actual concept of the roads, like how are you doing that part of it?
Google Maps is really helpful. They do have a bike icon, so like I know I can stay away from highways and use routes that are legally made for bikes, because that's another issue. I got to make sure I'm not violating any laws in the states that I'm going to travel through. And then I'm trying to do a dry run. So we're trying to get some funding to actually drive the route in a car so I can see logistically what that feels like. Maybe there's some stops along the way that I didn't find on my Google searches that I think may be a better fit. And we can add in some like cool things. I also want to throw in, maybe some local businesses. I'm trying to support local business as well. Finding a local mom and pop shop that sells cheesesteaks in Philly, that does pizza in New York, that does this, I really want to give back to the country as much as I can. I think supporting small business is the best way to do that.
I mean, imagine it, Adam. You see it in your mind's eye. You roll through Exeter or some random city, and you're working with their local newspaper, and they have the best pizza place in town, and you got the local brewer, and you just have a thing, and you highlight this, you take a sip of that, you have a good time, you discuss the project, you kind of talk about American history and patriotism and all that jazz, and you blow out of town. You're like Guy Fieri on 2 wheels instead of 4. How about that?
Yeah, just wrapping everything on like Paul Revere, Guy Fieri. I mean, just name it. Like we're just gonna It's going to be, this is the definition of a melting pot of an initiative. And that's what our country's founded off of, right? A melting pot. That's what I want to be.
All right, I love it. Adam, well, thank you so much for your time once again. Tell us the names of the websites one final time on your way out the door. And like I said, I would love to have you back, maybe once a month or something, because there's going to be a lot of progress made. Next time, we need to find out about sponsors. What's the jersey going to look like? We're going to talk about Brown Beauty. Do you have a brown bike yet? There will be updates along the way, fundraising goals, new ideas, people you're teamed up with. So maybe once a month as we go into September. But once again, please tell us one final time where to find more information about your project here.
www.tourdepatriot.com. If you're interested in the wellness side of it, www.soulfultraining.com. Oh, and one last tidbit. There's going to be a coffee table book to commemorate the event. So that'll be available for purchase probably sometime in August, I'm guessing.
Coffee table book. That sounds good. Once again, another a Seinfeld reference. Kramer's coffee table idea.
Yep, that's exactly.
All right. I like synchronicity when it comes back around, like a good Seinfeld episode. It all wraps up at the end. All right. Well, Adam, thank you so much. If you like the New American Media and want to support us, go to patreon.com/the New American Media. Check out thenewamericanmedia.com for all the links. Find us in all the places. Both of these shows today, because it's sports and health related. It's the Unhappy Hour Sports Show and the Agree to Disagree Show here at the New American Media. So find us in all the places. Oh, Adam, social media. Do you have a site on social aside from your two homepages? Do you have an Instagram? Do you have an X? Do you have any other place?
I have. Follow me on Instagram. It's at soulful_training. I have a Tour De Patriot Instagram account that is just not active yet, but we're going to start to see that. I'm going to link those two accounts. You're going to be able to follow my training because that's a big part of the 1,200-mile ride. And then we'll probably be doing some lives. We're going to be doing all kinds of stuff to promote the event.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's SOLEFUL_training on Instagram. Perfect. Yep. All right. Thank you, everybody. Awesome. Appreciate you. We'll talk to you again soon. Take care.